You brought a camera to Sunday dinner? My mother's voice carried that special blend of disappointment and exasperation she de-perfected over 32 years of parenting me. What she didn't know was that the camera hanging around my neck had just captured images that would appear on the cover of National Geographic's April issue. But how do you explain art to people who only understand spreadsheets? The dining room was exactly as it had been every Sunday for as long as I could remember. My mother's good china, my father's preferred wine, the chandelier casting warm light over a table set for 6. My older brother Devin sat across from me with his wife Amanda, both of them fresh from their jobs at the financial firm where they'd met. My younger sister Mira was to my left, scrolling through her phone between bites, probably reviewing case files from her public defender's office. And then there was me, Claire, the middle child, the one who never quite figured out how to be practical. I'm doing a project on natural light, I said, adjusting the Nikon D850 that sat heavy and familiar against my chest. The way it hits faces during conversation. Is unprofessional, my mother interrupted, passing the roasted chicken. We're having a family meal, Claire. Can't you put the toys away for 1 hour? Toys, my camera equipment was worth more than her car, but I didn't mention that. I'd learned years ago that correcting their assumptions only led to longer lectures about fiscal responsibility. Taking pictures isn't a real job, sweetie, Mom continued, her tone gentler now, as if she were explaining basic arithmetic to a child. It's a lovely hobby, very creative. But you're 32 years old. Don't you think it's time to consider something more sustainable? Devin nodded, cutting his chicken with precise movements that reminded me of a surgeon. Everything about my brother was precise. His job as a financial analyst, his marriage, his 3-bedroom condo in a neighborhood our parents approved of. Mom's right, Claire. Photography is great as a side hustle, but you can't build a life on it. What's your retirement plan? Your health insurance situation? I had both, actually. Excellent health insurance through the Professional Photographers Guild, and a retirement account that my financial advisor, yes, I had a financial advisor, had called remarkably robust for someone your age. But explaining that would require explaining everything else, and I was tired of trying. I'm doing fine, I said quietly, the same thing I always said. You're living in a studio apartment in Bushwick, Myra said, not looking up from her phone. At 32. That's not fine, that's arrested development. The studio apartment in Bushwick was actually a converted warehouse loft with 20-foot ceilings and north-facing windows that flooded the space with perfect natural light. I bought it outright 3 years ago for $1.2 million. But they'd only visited once, declared it, charmingly bohemian, and never asked how I afforded it. When was the last time you had a steady paycheck? My father asked, entering the conversation with the weight of someone who'd built his own accounting firm from scratch. Regular income? Predictable revenue? Last month, I'd earned $340,000 from licensing fees alone. This is what I mean, Mom said, turning to Dad with that look they shared when discussing their problem child. She can't even answer basic questions about her finances. Claire, honey, we're not trying to attack you, we're worried. You're 32. You should be building equity, planning for the future. Instead, you're chasing this dream that, let's be honest, hasn't panned out. My work had been featured in Time magazine, The New Yorker, and National Geographic. I'd photographed 3 sitting presidents, 2 Nobel laureates, and the Dalai Lama. My prints sold for between $50,000 and $200,000 in galleries across the world. Last year, the Smithsonian had acquired 4 of my photographs for their permanent collection. But they didn't know any of that because they'd never asked to see my portfolio. Maybe you could do corporate photography, Amanda suggested helpfully. Headshots, company events. That's steady work. My firm uses a photographer who makes really good money. I'd been offered the position of staff photographer at Google 3 years ago. $350,000 base salary plus stock options. I turned it down because I didn't want to photograph tech conferences when I could be documenting climate change in the Arctic. That's actually smart, Devin said, pointing his fork at his wife appreciatively. Corporate work, weddings too. People pay crazy money for wedding photographers. You could probably make 60,000-70,000 a year if you hustled. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. The problem, my father said, settling back in his chair with his wine glass, is that Claire has always been more interested in the artistic side than the business side. She's talented, don't get me wrong. But talent without business sense is just expensive hobby. My phone buzzed again, insistently. Your phone, Mom said, her tone sharp. It can wait. Clearly it can't, Myra said, finally looking up from her own screen. Someone's blowing up your phone. Probably one of your photography friends asking to borrow equipment. The table laughed. Good-natured, pitying laughter that made my chest tight. My phone rang now. The buzzing was loud enough that everyone noticed. Claire, my mother said firmly. Answer it or turn it off. This is family time. I pulled out my phone. The screen showed 8 missed calls, all from the same number, Margaret Foster. Director of Photography at National Geographic. My heart rate kicked up. We'd been in negotiations for 4 months, an exclusive contract. 3 years, full editorial control. Access to their entire network of scientists and researchers. It was the kind of opportunity that came once in a career, if it came at all. But the contract had stalled 2 weeks ago over creative control clauses, and I'd assumed the deal was dead. I need to take this, I said, standing. During dinner, Mom's voice rose. Claire, that's incredibly rude. I know, I'm sorry. I'll be quick. I walked into the kitchen, my hands slightly shaking as I answered. Margaret? Claire? Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for an hour. Margaret's voice was vibrating with barely contained excitement. The board met today, emergency session. They approved everything, your terms, your creative control, the budget you requested, everything. I leaned against the kitchen counter, my camera suddenly heavy around my neck. Everything? The contract is $4.5 million over 3 years, full editorial control. You choose your assignments. You choose your subjects. We're announcing it with a cover story, your Arctic Climate Series, April issue. Claire, you're going to be the youngest contract photographer in National Geographic's history. The kitchen tilted slightly. $4.5 million. 3 years of complete creative freedom with the most respected photography publication in the world. My name on the cover of National Geographic. Claire, are you there? I'm here, I managed. Margaret, this is everything we talked about, she said. The lawyers are drawing up the final contracts now. We need you in D.C. tomorrow for the signing and the press conference. Can you make it? Yes. Absolutely yes. Perfect. I'm emailing you the details now. Flights booked, hotels arranged. The PR team wants to do a full profile. Background, influences, your journey as an artist. This is going to be huge, Claire. The board specifically mentioned that they wanted someone who could bring a fresh perspective to environmental storytelling. Your Arctic work sealed it. The Arctic work. 6 months in Svalbard documenting glacial collapse. Sleeping in temperatures that could kill you in minutes. Waiting hours for perfect light while my fingers went numb inside my gloves. Some of the hardest, most important work I'd ever done. I'll be there, I said. Congratulations, Margaret said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You've earned this. I hung up and stood in my mother's kitchen, staring at the email notification on my screen. The contract summary was already there. The numbers in bold. The terms spelled out in legal language that made it real, undeniable. Through the doorway, I could hear my family's conversation continuing. Devin talking about a promotion. Amanda discussing their vacation plans. Mira complaining about her caseload. And my mother saying, I just wish Claire would be realistic about her future. She's not getting any younger. I looked down at my camera, at the tool that had given me everything they couldn't see. Then I walked back into the dining room. Everything okay? Dad asked, though his tone suggested he assumed it wasn't. Actually, I said, sitting down slowly. That was National Geographic. The table went quiet. National Geographic? Myra repeated. The magazine. Yes. What did they want? Mom asked. Her fork paused midway to her mouth. I took a breath. 8 years of being dismissed. 8 years of being the family disappointment. 8 years of biting my tongue while they assumed I was failing. They wanted to confirm the details of my exclusive contract, I said. I'm being hired as a contract photographer, 3-year term. $4.5 million. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. The sound was sharp in the sudden silence. 4.5 million, Devin repeated slowly as if testing the words. Dollars? Amanda added unnecessarily. The contract covers my salary, production budgets, travel expenses, and equipment. I continued, my voice steadier now. I'll have full editorial control over my assignments. They're announcing it with a cover story in the April issue, my Arctic climate change series. Your Arctic series, Myra said faintly. When were you in the Arctic? 6 months last year. I was documenting glacial collapse and its impact on polar bear populations. It's a 12-image series. National Geographic is calling it some of the most important environmental photography of the decade. The silence was profound. Claire, my father said finally, his voice strange. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and opened my portfolio website. I built it 5 years ago but never shown my family. They never asked to see my work, so I never offered. I turned the screen so they could see, image after image. Presidents and poets, refugees and activists. Landscapes that had taken weeks to capture. Portraits that told entire stories in a single frame. This is my work, I said quietly. I've been a professional photographer for 8 years. My images have appeared in Time, The New Yorker, National Geographic, The Guardian, and about 40 other major publications. I've won 3 World Press Photo Awards, a Pulitzer Prize for feature photography, and last year the Smithsonian acquired 4 of my photographs for their permanent collection. Devin grabbed the phone, scrolling frantically. This is yours? All of this? Yes. You won a Pulitzer? Myra's voice climbed. Claire, when did you win a Pulitzer? 2 years ago. For my series on climate refugees in Bangladesh. My mother had gone very pale. You never told us. I did tell you, I said. I called you the day I won. You said congratulations and then asked if winning a prize meant I'd finally get a real job. The memory hung in the air between us. Your prints, Amanda said, still staring at the phone. It says here your prints sell for $50,000 to $200,000. Depending on the size and edition, I confirmed. I work with galleries in New York, London, and Tokyo. You own your apartment, Devin said, reading from my website's bio section. Outright, in Bushwick. A converted warehouse that's featured in Architectural Digest. I bought it 3 years ago. My father's face had gone from red to white. Claire, your annual income averaged $1.8 million over the past 3 years, I said. This year will be higher because of the National Geographic contract. The dining room had never been so quiet. Even the usual background noise, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the antique clock seemed to have stopped. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, and her voice cracked on the last word. I tried, I said simply. 5 years ago, I invited you to my first major gallery show in Chelsea. You said you were busy. 3 years ago, I won the World Press Photo Award. I sent you the press release. You emailed back saying, "That's nice, honey," and reminded me that Devin was being promoted. Last year, when the Smithsonian acquired my work, I asked if you wanted to come to the installation. You said you didn't have time to drive into DC for a photography exhibit. Each sentence landed like a stone in still water. You just assumed, I continued, that because I didn't have a conventional job I was failing. You saw my camera and thought toy. You saw my studio apartment and thought poverty. You never asked about my work, my income, my career. You just decided I was the disappointing one and treated me accordingly. That's not fair, Devin said, but his voice was weak. Isn't it? I met his eyes. You've been telling me to get a real job for 8 years. Dad just said 5 minutes ago that I had talent without business sense. Mom told me photography wasn't a real job literally at the start of this dinner. My mother was crying now, mascara streaking down her carefully made-up face. I have to leave, I said, standing and collecting my camera bag. I have a flight to DC tomorrow morning at 6 for the contract signing and press conference. The announcement goes live on National Geographic's website at noon Eastern. You can read about it then. Claire, wait, my father said, standing. We owe you an apology. He struggled for words. We've been blind. Yes, I agreed. You have been. Can we start over? Myra asked, her face flushed with embarrassment. Can we, actually see your work? Actually understand what you do? I looked at my sister. And my brilliant, accomplished younger sister who'd spent years treating me like a child who'd never grown up. And I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but possibility. The National Geographic announcement is tomorrow at noon, I said. They're doing a profile feature on their website, interviews, portfolio samples, behind the scenes from the Arctic shoot. If you want to understand what I do, start there. Actually read it. Actually look at the images. And if you still think photography isn't a real job, we can have that conversation. We will, Mom said, wiping her eyes. Claire, I promise we will. Good, I said. I grabbed my camera bag and headed for the door. At the threshold, I turned back. They were all standing now, clustered around the dinner table, looking shell-shocked and small. For what it's worth, I said, I never needed you to understand my art, but I needed you to respect that it was mine. That it mattered. That I wasn't just playing with a camera, I was building something meaningful. The walk to the subway felt different, lighter. My camera swung against my chest with familiar weight, and for the first time in years, I felt completely, entirely free from their expectations. The next day's press conference was perfect. Margaret introduced me as one of the most important documentary photographers of our generation. The Q&A went smoothly. By noon, my phone was flooded with messages from colleagues, friends, and contacts I hadn't heard from in years, and 17 messages from my family. All variations of the same thing. We read the article. We looked at your work. We had no idea. We're so sorry. We're so proud. I read them in my hotel room overlooking the National Mall, still wearing my camera around my neck, and smiled. They'd finally looked. Better late than never, I supposed. But the career I'd built that was mine. Created in silence, born from passion, developed in the darkroom of their doubt. And I wouldn't change a single exposure.